Okay. All right. We are live. Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say hello to all my money makers who are watching this currently and also who are going to be watching the replay here. And as you come in, please drop in the comment sections, where are you viewing us from? So I am broadcasting live from Texas here, and we have a special guest, and I'm going to allow him to go ahead and introduce himself. So, Terrell, could you please introduce yourself to the money makers here, as well as bringing in your audience who are here watching?
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm Terrell Turner. I own and run an accounting firm. So I am all about supporting people who are trying to find great ways of making money. I'm coming in from Charlotte, North Carolina. So I am very interested to see where everybody is coming from. And also to everyone on my YouTube channel and Facebook, thank you for joining. I think this is Diamond hosts some great conversations, so I'm looking forward to us having a good time.
Yes. Okay. So, could you give us a little bit of some background on what you do currently, and why are you qualified to talk to us today about making money?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, I run an accounting firm. We Our primary growth audience is really with law firms, and so we provide bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services for law firms. We have staff here in the U.S. as well as have about 8 staff members in the Philippines and 1 staff member in Kenya. And so what we really do is focus on helping our clients understand the money side of their business and then how to actually make smart decisions to make more money. And one of the big things that I've seen within like the accounting industry, and I know a ton of other firm owners, and a big issue that we're seeing in the accounting industry is that, hey, there's a big need. So you used to have a degree. Now I think so many opportunities are open up for people who want to look at accounting as an option. And I think I'm seeing so many people finding new ways of making money by getting into, creative ways of solving problems for others. So that's what I'm really excited about talking about.
Okay, I love that. And I have some questions for you. But before we get into that, I just wanted to shout out people in the chat. So we have Jane tuning in from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we have Tay from Jersey. And I am a Jersey girl myself. I'm just here in Texas as of right now. So shout out to you. And as you guys are coming in, please let us know where you are tuning in from in the chat. And if you missed it, we have our guest here, Terrell. So I wanted to ask you, because you do have the traditional 9 to 5 experience and you have the traditional schooling experience as well as the entrepreneurial experience. And I wanted to know what your journey was like transitioning from one to the other, or even just being in both. Like, what are some pros and cons that you've noticed in both of those areas, and how did you go from one to the other?
Absolutely. And before I answer that, can I just show a little love for the people in Lagos, Nigeria that are watching? Thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's been a while since I've been back to Lagos to visit my father-in-law there in Lagos, but thank you so much for tuning in. I love the entrepreneur, the hustle mentality, the energy in Lagos. One of the best international trips that I've taken. So thank you for tuning in from Lagos and
Love.
everybody here in the U.S. too.
Yes.
I got to show love for you too, as well. Now back to your question. So for me, I started off in the corporate route, and I went the traditional route of going to college, getting the education, taking out student loans, and
Right.
then getting into the field. And one of the things that I quickly realized is, even after all that education and getting the loans, when you got on the job, you still had to learn the job. It
Mhm.
wasn't like school actually prepared me to actually do the job. Now, there may have been some theoretical things that school really helped me kind of understand. But when it came down to actually doing the job, it wasn't that like, hey, school just gave me the amazing head start on it. That's like I had to learn it actually doing it. And I did that for several years, and I did it for probably about 13 years. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, all right, I think I've developed enough skills in doing the work that I wanted to start kind of branch out, do my own thing. And I wasn't really quite sure at the time, like how I wanted to start my own thing. And
Yeah.
so for me is I kind of started testing the market a little bit, and I started just creating content on YouTube, social media, and I was just talking about, hey, here's what I know about accounting and finance and money, and sharing that on social media.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a little bit of kind of credibility when I did decide to kind of step out and said, hey, what I'm going to do is offer accounting. So I'm going to take the skill that I learned in corporate America and I'm going to offer it to, small business owners.
Yeah.
And I realized there was a big need for it. And a lot of people were like, hey, I need some help managing this part of my, my small business. And I'm like, well, I can help. And
Hmm.
so that's really how we kind of started. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave my full-time job to really put my energy into it. Now, when I made that decision, it was literally like my wife and I took a trip to Lagos. While we were there, we had many conversations while we were visiting my father-in-law there. Then when we came back, we were like, hey, I'm going to leave my full-time job and I'm going to start this full-time. And the company I was with wanted me to stay on a couple more months because we were wrapping up a major project.
Hmm.
So I stayed on a couple more months. But then the day I left was like what, March 30th of 2020. So
Wow.
like April 1st was when I started the business, and that was the beginning, really the beginning of the pandemic and all the shutdowns. So
Yeah.
I started the business like at the beginning of the pandemic, and I learned a ton in the process. But for a while, like I said, I kind of, stuck my toe in the water a little bit, but then I was like, yo, I'm ready to go full all in to start my business.
So that is really interesting. So when you were starting your business in the pandemic what sorry, what are some things that you learned at that time and how did that go in the midst of that? Were you able to get clients or was that extremely difficult? Like what was the time that you actually got your first client?
Yeah, so for me, I would say is it started off being very difficult because, and I think part of that is because I had this perspective of we're in a pandemic, no one's gonna hire us. But then when I really spent more time like just talking to more business owners, because I ended up starting a podcast and just interviewing business owners because I was like, I had to get my name out there somehow. So
Mhm.
I would just email people like, hey, I'm starting the podcast, talking to business owners. Hey, you can share your story, promote your business. And that's how I started talking. And when I did that, I realized like, even though we were in a pandemic, like people still needed, the services that I offered. And like people were still spending money on those types of services. And I think once I started shifting the way I thought about it, like, hey, you know what? I know we're in a pandemic, but people still need help. Like, really, entrepreneurship comes down to finding a problem that you can solve for other people. And I think once I started looking at it that way, it got a lot easier. And it took me about like, I would say about 6 months before I kind of got some steady clients. Cause prior to that, you pick up a few, I guess one-off things that you can do. But
Mhm.
getting to the point where, I signed my first client where like, hey, this company the client that I signed was paying me $1,500 a month to do their accounting work. And that was where things started to really get steady to where I'm like, hey, if they would agree to pay me $1,500 a month to do this, and I can do it myself, and I can probably find other people to do the same. And that's kind of
Mhm.
how things started taking off.
Now, I love that you mentioned the use of social media. I'm going to assume that you didn't have much social media background prior to that. Is that a good assumption?
That is absolutely a good I like that you're being nice and not just like really understand like the stereotype of an accountant is not that they're very social at all.
Yeah, just an assumption, just an assumption. But so how was Now, how did social media play a role into you booking your clients, and how did you navigate going into social media when you didn't have a lot of experience in that field? Because I run into a lot of people that are
Mhm.
very apprehensive about the social media space. And I'm like, if you want to be in business in any way, shape, or form, like, you cannot avoid social media. Either you're going to pay somebody to do it, or you're going to get
Mhm.
in front of the camera and you're going to do it yourself. But that is just simply the part of business that is, it is what it is. There's still word of mouth, but social media is going to be one of the best ways for you to market that business. So how did you make that decision that, okay, I need to jump on there? And how did you even find, because for a lot of people, the bravery to do that, a lot of people are afraid of judgment. So what did that process look like for you there?
So I would say starting off, I had made the decision. I was like, I'm gonna just write blogs. People don't need to see my face. They don't need to hear my voice. I'm just gonna write blogs. And my wife came to me. She was like, "Hey, I saw this YouTube video, and I think you should probably do video." And I'm like, "Nah, that's not me. I'm just gonna write these blogs. They don't need to see my face. They don't need to hear my voice." And I think after a couple weeks, I realized I was like, you know what? Maybe there is something to this. But just like everybody else, I was very apprehensive to it, and I was just like, "All right, I know I'm not good on camera. I don't know if I will like the sound of my voice coming across on video." And
No
so
one
what
does.
I
Seriously. Yes.
so for me, I was like, okay, all right, I got to get over this. And so what I would do is I would, at the time, like my wife and I were living in Ohio. And so I would just go into the basement after work and sit down in front of the camera, and I would just record me saying and doing something. And
Mhm.
I think like the first 10 recordings were so horrible that I ended up deleting them. I didn't even let my wife see them because I'm like, man, this is really bad. But I did notice like number 11, I'm like, number 11 felt better than number one. And
Yes.
I'm like, if I can just make a little bit of progress on each video or each week, maybe I might not be that bad. And
Yeah.
so I just kind of started. And I will say some of those early videos were really rough.
Mhm.
To where like it would take me maybe like 40 minutes to psych myself up to do a 5-minute video. And it just because I had so many negative thoughts about the experience of it. But I think once I stopped focusing on like, hey, how I look on camera and stuff like that, and I really started focusing on like, hey, right now I have a skill set that can help people. And I was listening to the problems that other people are having. And I'm like, what if I just treated it like I was just having a conversation one on one with somebody? And I just said, hey, so and so asked this question. Hey, here's my response. Here's my answer on it. Put it out there in the video. Keep it short, keep it sweet.
Mhm.
And the more that I did that, the more I would see like people would come back and they would tell me, like, hey, that answer really helped me. Hey, I had that same problem. And so for me, it's like I focus less on like how I look on camera and just like, okay, all right, who am I here to help today? And I think the more that I focused on that, the easier it got. Now, I would say now, several years later, it feels like people always tell me, like, man, you look like a natural. And I'm like,
Mhm.
it absolutely did not happen that way.
Agree. And it's so funny because your experience is exactly like my first experience when it came to recording videos. I was that same exact way. And I don't know what it was, but I was like, it would take me so much hyping up just to hit the record button. And it seems so silly, but it's very, at first it feels very unnatural to sit there and talk to a camera. It's very
Mhm.
weird. But and I didn't like the sound of my voice. I didn't like to watch myself back on camera. And then I'm like, oh, my hair was out of place. Just the smallest things. My head looks big in this, whatever. Just the smallest things to stop yourself. But like you said, you recorded those 10 videos, and then video 11 started to feel like, hey, this isn't so bad. And it's just like, the more that you do it, I think I guess on my channel, YouTube counts, but I think it's been like 260 videos that I've posted. I've recorded way more than that,
Mm,
and not everything makes the cut, but the more that you do it, like the easier it becomes, and it does become a lot more natural. And then you learn to say things a certain way, you learn to record a certain way so that it's easier to edit. And it's just a
mm,
skill that you have to kind of, like any other skill, get out and try and practice. So I love that you said that. And I just wanted to mention that because I know a lot of people, they're like, I want to start social media, but I just can't. They just seem so, it's like a mental paralysis to not move forward in that. And I wanted to just speak to the chat real quick. Let us know, are you someone that is looking for extra ways to make money? Are you a small business owner, or do you look forward to owning your own home-based business or starting something from home? And also, why is that? Are you just wanting to spend time with your family? Do you want to go after other pursuits? Do you just hate your job and you're looking for something else to do? Please let us know in the chat, and please do like this video so that it could get out to more people. Thank you, Melanie, for answering that. And I just want to shout out all the people. Strawberry Happiness, she did ask if you had a training on bookkeeping, and the answer is yes. And if you want to
mm.
speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm really passionate about, because I would say is doing accounting, bookkeeping work was a big game changer for me because I didn't come from a family that was like, hey, we're very business oriented. I mean, most of my family, I mean, legacy military. So like my grandfather, uncles, aunts, I mean, my father, brother all went into the military, and I wanted to do something different. So I would say accounting opened up a huge opportunity for me. And right now, I think there are a lot of people who can see accounting as a potential opportunity. So, probably about a year and a half ago, I partnered with a company called CourseCareers, and they asked me, they said, "Hey, can we create an entry level course that people can take to learn the basic skills that they need to land jobs in the accounting industry?" And so I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And we worked on the course. Probably took us about maybe 5 months to work on the course and really lay it out for people to understand. And the way I kind of looked at it is like, I mean, as an employer myself who hires accountants, I said, okay, all right, what are the basic skills that I expect them to know when they come in on day one? And then how do I take out all of the extra fluff and
Mhm.
get you right to the point and make sure that they have, like, some practice and understanding of those concepts? And so we designed the course. And I would say so far, when I was looking like last week, I think we've had over 780 people sign up and take the course. There have been some people who've come back and sent me messages on LinkedIn like, "Hey, Terrell, I landed my job." Like one guy, like, and I'm super proud of him. I mean, it's a self-paced course. Like he came back to me and he was like, "Hey, I was working in fast food in the drive-through, and he was telling me, he was like, I just got tired of having customers yell at me and I wanted something different." And so he took the course and he said he kept applying for jobs. He got his first job and he was like, this is the first time I've ever made more than, $30,000, at a job. And he just texted me back and he was like, "Hey, I've been promoted and they're moving my salary up to 60 plus thousand." I'm like, man, that is awesome. Cause I'm like, to go from working fast food, having customers yell at you, taking the course, and then seeing a whole new opportunity for him and his family. So I'm super excited about the course.
Yes, and I also wanted to mention that for anyone that is interested in just seeing what it is about, there is an introductory phase that you can sign up for free, so that you can, check it out and see whether or not it's a good fit for you. Now, I wanted to kind of switch gears here because I know we're talking about accounting, and you did mention that now this within the market that there's such a high demand there that
Yeah.
they may be, kind of lowering the barriers to entry there, but there might be still, licenses and becoming a CPA, things of that nature. Can you speak more to bookkeeping and
Yeah.
why bookkeeping may be a better solution or a good entryway for people to enter in that field without having to go fully into accounting?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes down to bookkeeping, what we realized is so many businesses, they don't have that, that skill set to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And the thing is, every business needs bookkeeping. I mean, if you think about the number of small business, there are hundreds of thousands of small businesses that are out there. And yes, there are some tools out there that do aid people in trying to do it themselves. But the reality is when you're trying to build a business, trying to do your own bookkeeping is probably not the first thing that comes in your mind. I mean, and I think for so many businesses in the process of doing like the first podcast that I launched, which was called like the Business Talk Library, and I sat down and I just interviewed, other small business owners. And I think in that first year, I filmed 250 episodes in year one.
Wow.
And in talking to so many of them, I realized like bookkeeping was a huge need. It was a huge gap for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And sometimes like they either didn't have the time to do it themselves or they couldn't hire someone in-house. And so I realized bookkeeping was a huge opportunity. And I've met so many people who didn't have an accounting background. They
Mhm.
learned some of the skills that it takes to do bookkeeping, or they learned a particular software and they started doing it. And many of them have created, a very successful business for themselves of just doing bookkeeping. Like there's one young lady I talked to a lot, and I asked her, kind of how'd you get into this? She was like, I learned the software. I heard somebody needed, they needed some bookkeeping help. I volunteered to do it for free for them at first. And
Yeah.
after doing it, for a little bit, she realized like, hey, I can actually learn this skill and I can do it. And now, I mean, she's been running her own business for a couple of years and, doing very well of being able to pick up more clients. And she always thought that, hey, well, if I don't have a degree, will people not hire me? And I'm like, if you can solve this problem for people and you can prove that, then they'll hire you
Mm.
because they don't want to do it themselves. And so I do think, bookkeeping is one of those areas where you don't need a degree. You don't have to get a license to do bookkeeping. I mean, if you have the skill and you put yourself out there to offer your services, like there are people who will definitely hire you.
Love that. And I want to just answer this question, which you did go over. Strawberry Happiness asks, can you do this freelancing or do you do this as a career after taking the course? Can you speak to both sides, how taking the course can help as a freelancer, but also in the career sector as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, taking the course, what I would say is it's there to help equip you with the skills you need so that you're familiar with the concepts of accounting. And so what I did is I took, the stuff that I paid cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a degree in and learning it. And I said, all right, how do I take the fluff out and just give you the actual skills that you need and build some of the practices in there? And with that, I've had people message me and tell me like, hey, you know what? I run my own bookkeeping business. I took the course because I wanted to brush up on my skills a little bit. They took the course. They're using it as a freelancer. There are other people that I know that have taken the course and they wanted to use it for their career. So you can use it for either because the course is really there to help you get the skills and to really help build your confidence in doing the actual work. So if you want to use it as a freelancer or you want to go the route of looking for a career path, then the options are there for you.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Strawberry Happiness, for your question there. And I wanted to shift gears really quick, but as we're talking about freelancing or entrepreneurial ventures versus the more so going the 9 to 5, the traditional route, we see like a lot that's going on in the news in terms of the job markets and a lot of like the layoffs that are happening. How, in your personal opinion, where do you perceive is the best way to go? Is it better to try to use these skills, taking courses like this to make yourself a more valuable person in the marketplace when it comes to the corporate space? Or do you feel as though those efforts are better used towards more so entrepreneurial journeys going that way?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say the way that a early mentor told me is, don't focus so much on like trying to land a job or focus so much on trying to just like, I guess narrow yourself down to just one option.
Mm,
What you should focus on is developing the skills that you can use, whether you want to go the job route or whether you want to go the entrepreneurial route. And he said, now, to be completely honest with you, accounting, whether you go the job route or whether you go the entrepreneurial route, you
mhm.
do need to have some understanding of accounting,
Right.
especially if you want to be a business owner. Like, I mean, because you got to make sure that the money makes sense for the business that you're running. Even if you're not doing the detailed bookkeeping yourself, you want to have at least some understanding of that. And so I'm a huge proponent of encouraging people pick up the skills and
Mm,
then focus on, okay, what opportunity presents itself the most? Because if you pick up the skills and let's say, hey, you get a great career opportunity as an option. And if that opportunity presents itself before you, I would say take that road. But if you pick up the skills and like, hey, there isn't a career opportunity, the skills still allow you to go the entrepreneurial route. And for some people, I mean, you may want to do both at the same time,
yeah.
or some people may want to get the skills. Hey, I want to get a little bit more comfortable with the skills. So I'll work a job in someone else's company and then I'll branch off and do my own thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the route that I went was I picked up the skills. I did the job long enough until I had the personal confidence and credibility to say, hey, you know what? I can do this on my own. And I think you got to kind of really assess like, where are you in your journey? If
Yeah.
you have the confidence to just go right into entrepreneurship, I would say, hey, my hat's off to you. You are much
Mhm.
further along the journey than I was when I
Yeah.
started. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I love that you said that. One thing that my mom always says is like, if you have skills and you have a skill set, someone has to hire you. Like there has to be doors open for you as long as you have those skill sets, because it's just simply about you upping your value, your market value, not your inherent value, but your market value by obtaining those things and, being able to kind of, because I come from, the east, so I'm coming from the New York, New Jersey area where it's a lot of competition. And so to have these type of skills, and it doesn't even have to be a full 4-year degree, but to have those certificates or to show that you've learned something, and it definitely sets you apart in the marketplace. And like you said, whichever way you go, it's a valuable thing to have for sure. So I want to, coming from both of us who both have degrees, but also are entrepreneurs, I wanted to ask you, where do you see the future of formal education being? And do you feel as though it's just as important today as maybe it was, let's say, 20 years ago or so? Or with different resources like CourseCareers, can you see the digital space like really taking over formal education?
I definitely see for for the small to mid-sized businesses, they're I think responding a lot faster than like your mega super large businesses. And I think because across the board, I mean, education, the formal route is getting more expensive.
Yes.
So more people are, I think, making a wise decision to say, hey, do I find a way to pick up the skills and go right into working, or do I kind of defer for 4 years and then pick up a few, thousand or couple, maybe $100,000 in loans
Yeah.
and then take my shot that way? Most people are really looking at that saying like, hey, you know what, the $100,000 formal route is probably a little bit more risky if there's a different option. And I think more and more companies are opening their eyes to realize like, hey, just because you have a degree doesn't mean you can actually do the job.
I agree.
What I really want is someone who has the skill and the attitude that can actually apply themselves. Because I mean, no matter what field I have seen, like I said, when I worked in the corporate world, I worked for a couple of Fortune 500 companies, and I worked with a lot of engineers. And even though they go through very intense learning, I mean, on the job is where they actually learn how to be an engineer.
Very.
And I do think that if you have the, the mindset, the attitude to really pick up those skills and really go into the profession, I think more companies are going to see that. And the college degree route or the formal route will still be there, but I think less people will choose that, and they won't be penalized for not choosing the formal route, because I think the formal route is going to be more, I guess you would say, more theoretical, and more for those people who are like, hey, I want to go I want to, go into education, or I want to be a professor. But I'm also seeing that a lot of companies are shifting and say, hey, we'll take you without the degree if
Mhm.
you have the basic skill sets. And then after you get the job, hey, then we'll pay for you to get the degree while you're working. Because I think that combination of real world experience
Yes.
combined with the degree, I think that's way more valuable for the individual and more valuable for the company.
100%. And a lot of the times on my channel, I find different resources and jobs that are available, remote jobs, things like that for people to do. And so I'm looking at the requirements, and some of these places are like, we want you to have a 4-year degree and 5 years of work experience. I'm like, how, you know what I mean? Like, how did you expect someone that was, and they're like, oh, and first time it's coming out of college, because they want younger people that are a little bit more innovative and things like that. And I'm like, what do you think that a college student is doing? They're not doing that. I wasn't doing, I mean, I was working a couple jobs, but not in the field that was in my degree. You can't get a job without the degree. So it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, that's highly well, it's very rare to try to find someone like that. But more often than not, I see a lot of jobs that say, if you have this experience and you can
Yeah.
prove that this is what you're able to do, send us your portfolio. And they just want to get on the phone and they want to hear that, you didn't draw this up from ChatGPT and just kind of BS it, but that you really do have experience in it. So that's a big thing. And even though I know we're talking about the accounting sector on CourseCareers, I see that they've even uploaded like construction,
Yeah.
having construction courses and having supply chain courses. And my degree is in supply chain management. So it's like, hey, I could have saved 4 years. But that's, and with supply chain is a very high in demand industry as well. So with education like that, and being able to know what to do in the logistics and going into businesses, especially smaller businesses, then you really can be a powerhouse and set yourself apart by just having and showing that you
Mhm.
know what you're talking about. And like you said, just because you have the degree doesn't mean that you know that you're a professional in that field, or that you know anything about it, honestly. So great question, Strawberry. And that was going to be my next question. So could you lay out a framework for someone that wanted to go out in this sector as a freelancer? They don't have the money to hire a bunch of people. They're a one-stop shop, or they're a one man shop. Could you lay out some type of framework? What would be the first to the last step that you would do in order to find your first client?
Okay. All right. So I'll give you the kind of the secret sauce and the reality of what I actually did. So I didn't have much credibility in the space as far as a freelancer when I started my firm. So I knew I had to build credibility. So a couple of things that I looked at is, looking at the kind of the gig economy of, I went on like sites like Fiverr and stuff like that. And I looked to see, okay, all right, what were people saying about bookkeeping? Like, how did they describe themselves and stuff like that? And that way I knew how to speak the lingo,
Yeah.
that because I knew how to get a job. I mean, because I would say how you talk about your skill set in the corporate setting is very different from how you talk about it in the freelancer setting. So I would say is, I use other people's I learned from other people by looking at what they were doing, how they position themselves. And then I also looked at things like, at the time, I was looking at things like Craigslist of people who were actually looking for a bookkeeper. And I mean, they put their request out there. So I found their email address and emailed them and said, hey, I do bookkeeping. I saw your post. Be willing to help. And like I said, not everybody's going to respond and say yes right away. But I just put myself out there in different ways. And then I would say probably for me, the most successful thing was really creating content on social media.
Mm,
And I started off in the earlier time, like outside of just hopping on doing like a 15-minute interview with someone. And really the interview was probably the easiest route for me because I get on, I say, hey, welcome to the show. We have such and such guest on. Hey, tell me a little bit about your background. And then I would let them talk. And then I would sit there and smile. And then I would ask one more question.
mhm,
And so in a 15-minute window, I probably talked for maybe 3 minutes out of the 15. I let them do the rest of the talking. And then afterwards, I would always ask, like, hey, do you know any other business owners who would be a good guest on? And that's how I started meeting a lot of business owners. And I would say, 8 out of 10 people at the end of the episode would ask me, so what do you do? And
mm,
then I would tell them what I did. And that's how I started meeting a lot of business owners. And so I would say after kind of doing that, the way that I get clients now, just because we built up more of a brand, is a lot of times I'll create maybe like a short, like 2-minute video on social media, and I'll talk about a hot topic. Like, for example, like right now, everybody's trying to get through tax season. Hey, here are 3 things you need to know to protect your business as you're going through tax season. And to
mm,
be honest with you, you can look up those 3 things on ChatGPT. Just
mm.
use your personality to deliver the message. And doing stuff like that, I think really helped me put myself out there for people to see, like, hey, he offers this service that could solve my problem. And eventually, like I said, the right people end up finding you and reaching out. And then I think whenever you do get a client, it's just making sure you deliver. And
Yeah.
even for some people, I started off like I just did something for free. I saw someone who had a small business and hey, I'm bookkeeper. I'm willing to do it for free as long as, hey, you can put in a good word or leave me a Google review or tell people about what I did for you. And I did a couple jobs for free for people, and they told other people, and it eventually led to clients.
Yes, and that's such a big one. Whenever I do my coaching, the first thing that I tell people is if you have no real experience, you don't have anything, a portfolio, something to show for, the first thing that you need to do is do it for free. Offer your services for free. And who could turn you down when you're offering to do something for free, especially when you're genuinely feeling a need. Like, there was a young lady I was coaching and she had a cleaning business, but she was like, but I need to get more clients. I'm like, well, you need to go out to these places. She's like, I want to help clean churches. Go to a church and ask, can I clean for you for free? Who is going to say no? You know what I mean? Unless they already have a cleaning team. So most of the time it was either, oh, well, we already have staff. Well, then you need to go to smaller churches that don't have a staff, and in exchange for that, say, by the way, if I do this for free, the only thing I ask for is, would you allow me to record content while I clean?
Yep.
Would you give me a review after, your honest review? You don't have to fake it. Give me your honest review, because even honest reviews will tell you how to become better as well. And another thing, so whatever you do it for free,
Yep.
and just open those doors, have conversations. There was another young lady, she was going into, I believe, like a virtual assistant or something of the sort, and she reached out to me on Instagram on my DMs, and she just said, can I have a 10-minute phone call, like Zoom call, and just ask you questions? That's all I want. I don't want to sell you anything. I just want to ask you some questions. I'm trying to build up my business. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I had 10 minutes to give to her. And the questions she asked me, my answers that I gave her, because I'm the type of clientele she was looking for, she was like, this is extremely helpful. So just being able to, number one, gather that information about the problem that you're going to solve and the people that you are solving that problem to, and offering your service for free so you can gather up some evidence that you can do what you actually said that you could do, and then post it on social media. And it doesn't have to be perfect, like we said before. And I also wanted to drop another gem for everyone. Usually my money makers know I talk about ChatGPT all the time, but I'm like, you guys don't understand how amazing ChatGPT is. And using the deep search feature that they just added, you'll be able to like, can you research people on Fiverr who are looking for bookkeepers? You know what I mean? Or people that give me the top performing profiles on Fiverr that are offering bookkeeping services, and tell me what do they add in their bios. So these are things that you can then add to your list of things that you can do, premium services that you can offer, and so on and so forth. And you could also use it to help you find clientele. So there's just so many ways to do this in a faster manner, where you could truly build up a real business. Now, I wanted to ask you, is it possible to build a six-figure business as a freelancing bookkeeper?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely possible. I mean, I've met plenty of people that did. And I would say, I mean, even for myself, even like during the pandemic, I mean, we didn't hire our first person until after we got over we got what 80,000 in revenue, and because I knew that I was planning for much bigger growth,
Mhm.
we hired a person early, but I probably could have done it myself, just me, all the way up to 150,000
Wow.
with no staff. So, I mean, I think it's definitely possible to build a six-figure plus business if you want to just do it yourself as a freelancer,
Mm.
because I think at the end of the day, I mean, it really comes down to, solving a problem for people. And I've known people who have done that where they were like, "Hey, Terrell, I don't really want to build a big business. I don't want employees. I just want to do it myself as a freelancer." And I think there are a lot of, opportunity out there for people who do that. And I've seen people say, "Hey, you know what? I've been able to build a freelance business that was more than I was making on my full-time job. And I
Mhm.
feel like I have a lot more control, and I can really limit who I work with and how many people I work with, so they can really control that." So I think it's definitely possible.
Now, when you do start to hire, what are like the first things that you're looking for? Are you looking to hire a virtual assistant, or are you looking to hire an additional bookkeeper? Like, what positions do you need to fill? Like, were the most strenuous on you? I hope that was the right word to use. But what was
Yeah.
you get what I'm trying to say here? So yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I went the route of hiring a bookkeeper first because I knew I wanted to really scale and take things to the next level. And I had already I had done enough, putting content out there to where I'm like, okay, I can do the marketing piece myself. But I'm like, to free up my time to
Mm,
really go get more clients and do more sales, I'm like, I need someone to actually do the bookkeeping work. And
yeah.
so for me, I hired someone who had the technical skill that could do the work while I focused on bringing in more clients.
Yeah.
And so I would say my hiring started with hiring a person who could actually do the work that needed to be delivered to the client. And then the next hire I made was someone who can edit my videos so that I could spend more time actually talking to more clients and growing the business more. And then we just kind of, once we got kind of that core, those three people, it was like, okay, all right, I need more people who can do the work, because now
Mhm.
we got more clients coming in. And we just kind of started gradually building that way to where now we have I have three people on my marketing team, and then the rest on the accounting team, which is really scaling and growing.
Love that. I love that you mentioned all of that. And that actually goes into the next question that I had for you was, besides obviously delegating, when you're wearing so many different hats and you have so many different roles in life, be it that you have a family, be it that maybe you're starting this on the side while you are working a 9 to 5 job, do you have any advice to anyone here that may be in that situation and trying to figure out how to juggle that?
Yeah, I think the toughest challenge, I think, is recognizing that like where you started isn't where you need to stay. Because there were some clients that, I brought on in the very beginning, like, that they were paying me maybe $500 a month to do their bookkeeping. But
Mhm.
once we grew to a certain point to where I'm like, okay, all right, the clients we were now bringing on, because our firm had grown and like our capacity, our ability to deliver had grown, like I had to go back to some of those early clients and say, hey, we're growing as a firm and we had to raise our prices. And if it wasn't the right fit for them, hey, I would help them find another bookkeeper who was a good fit. Because, for us, it wasn't the right business move for me to keep trying to serve, the clients that came in the beginning, because they couldn't afford where we were. Because as you hire people, like, hey, your costs for operating your business change. And so like the
Yeah.
math changes on your business. And for me, I think I've seen a lot of people struggle with that, to where it's like they're usually telling me like, hey, I'm struggling to manage it all. And I would say, well, let's look at your clients and let's see how many of these clients are on the low end of your pricing. And they usually tell me like, well, most of my clients are. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
never going to outrun that math problem. I'm like, at some point, if you're growing to a certain level, it's okay for you to graduate. And that was something that I had told, some of the early clients, and I loved working with them. And some of them have come back as their business grew to hire us again. Is I was honest with them and said, hey, you know what, we're growing. I don't want to be a disservice to you and overcharge you based on where your business is. So let me help you find a different solution that's a better fit for where your business is now, because I had to make the right decision for our business. And I will say, once I started doing that, a lot of that pressure of like trying to manage everything got a lot lighter, because we were working with the clients who were the right fit for where we were. And I kind of compare it to an analogy. I mean, it's just like, when you go through puberty and you start getting taller, if you try to put on the clothes you used to wear before you hit your growth spurt, like it's going to be really uncomfortable. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people struggle with that. Is just like, hey, as you can tend to grow, it's okay for you to make changes in your business, because you're not going to have the capacity to serve the same number of clients that you did in the past as things change. And even for me, like I actually enjoyed doing the accounting work, but as we grew and I got people on the team, like I
Mhm.
had to be comfortable letting some of that stuff go. And that's where I kind of got into like, hey, if I hired these people and I trained them well, I should feel comfortable letting them go, letting some of this stuff go. If I'm not, that means I either didn't train them well or I hired the wrong person. And so I need to fix that. And I think as you kind of navigate those stages of growth, that's probably the best way that I would say you can kind of manage, all that's going on as you kind of go throughout your journey.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you said that, because once you get to that point, it is a very difficult decision to make, because there's a fear that, okay, well, what if I end up losing all of my clients, and then what happens? And nobody wants to pay the price that I have now, but there is always someone out there. Before I ask you one of my last questions, I just wanted to invite the chat that if you have any questions for either one of us, now is the time to ask them, and we will pull your comment up and we will go ahead and answer that question. But I wanted to ask, I actually lost my train of thought. Oops. What I wanted to ask you was, are there any pieces of closing advice that you have for anyone that is either looking to get into bookkeeping, looking to go into accounting, or anyone that's just interested in learning through CourseCareers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes down to accounting, a lot of times it's a pretty scary thing for people on the outside looking in. But I say it comes down to just really a few sets of skills. And I think Course Careers does a really good job of helping you really have a convenient and a very cost effective way to actually pick up those skills that you need. And I think that if you really focus on like, hey, let me pick up the skills, and those skills will actually open a lot of doors for you. Like I said, I mean, if you have the skills of, entry level accounting, I mean, you could go the route of freelancing, doing it yourself. You can go the route of, starting a career with another company, even if you currently have a job. I mean, the accounting skill can actually open up more opportunities within the current career path that you have. And so I always tell people is that it's really about picking up those skills that you need to open up the next level of opportunity, then it's really you bringing, like I said, your energy, your expectation, your openness and your willingness to work hard to make the most of the opportunity that comes before you.
Yes, thank you for that. So as we're closing out, can you please let everyone know how to stay in contact with you if they have questions after this, where to follow you on social media, and anything else that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I would say the easiest place to get in touch with me would be on LinkedIn. And I would say is whether you are trying to build a career or whether you're trying to do freelance or build a business, I think LinkedIn is a phenomenal platform to do it. I mean, I think the organic reach that you get is still pretty phenomenal compared to other platforms. And I mean, people are looking to do business in that space. So I would say is reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is Terrell A. Turner, CPA. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I think yeah, I'm very reachable there. And if I don't see it, someone on my marketing team is going to see it and let me know. So I always say that's probably the easiest place because multiple eyeballs are on my profile there. And I think, like I said, we post a lot of content there as well of just different things that we're seeing. And then also, what I've told people is if you're posting different stuff on LinkedIn about like, hey, your career, your side hustle, a lot of times people will tag me in it. I'll comment in it. And the good thing is, then people in my network are going to see it
Yeah.
once I comment on it. And that's given some people, some really good attention on the valuable things that they're trying to do with their skill set, their career, their freelance path. So I would definitely say LinkedIn is the best way to reach me and reach out to me.
Yeah, thank you for leaving that, Jim, too, because I've been hearing about LinkedIn a whole lot more now and how people are almost using it as a social platform where before it was kind of, just the networking thing. But there's a lot more that people are doing with content and posting videos now there. So it's definitely something that I'm going to personally look into for myself as well, to make those connections. But I want to thank you so much for joining. For anyone that's just now coming in, there will be a replay available, so you can go ahead and rewatch this. And thank you again for our great guest, and thank you Moneymakers for joining in. Thank you everybody from Terrell's platforms for joining in as well. And we just wanted to let you know to have a blessed night, and we do hope that you picked up some gems from here because there was definitely some gems dropped.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for joining. And I mean, you got some really good representation from West Africa. I
Yeah.
mean, here. I mean, West Africa is definitely showing love.
Shout out to Ghana, shout out to my people from Nigeria, Lagos, and everywhere else that we had a couple of places. You guys definitely showed up, and everyone from the US too. We love y'all as well. So thank y'all for joining in. Well, again, everyone, thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Janet, Strawberry Happiness, everyone that came in and asked questions and engaged. And please share this with someone that you may know who would be interested in going down this route. So we're going to go ahead and end the live. And again, thank you, Terrell, for joining us.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.